Our next guest says if a Twitter takeover does happen, there are only two ways it can shake out. Let's bring in Fast Money friend Packy McCormick of Not Boring Capital to get his take. What are the two scenarios, Packy?
So I think there's a couple of interesting scenarios here. One, I mean, I have to say it. There's the the potential kind of decentralization scenario if he takes it private. I think that you have a kind of a moderation kind of dynamite on your hands if you're Elon Musk, and even if he's the world's most benevolent dictator, having one person control the discourse, I don't even think he would want that. And so really interesting to see what he does there. And on the other side, I mean, what happens when Elon, if he doesn't do that and he is kind of running this company as a private owner of Twitter? I think he actually leans into the decentralization piece a little bit here, but that might be wishful thinking on my part.
That's interesting because that was sort of one of Mark Cuban's ideas that he had on Twitter. A decentralized group of supporters for the current thing will create a DAO to buy Twitter. Token holders will get to vote on what's trending and who gets verified. So that is out there as well. Do you think he's thinking that far out? I mean, that would be a fundamental change for Twitter and its structure, and it could have huge implications for how other social media networks are run.
So this is Elon we're talking about. So I do think he's thinking very far out. I think one of the things that you're buying if you're buying Twitter is this asset where the core user base, like while growth hasn't been there and while it hasn't been able to get outside of those kind of 300 million MDAOs, the core base is not going anywhere anytime soon. And particularly if you don't care about the economics like Elon doesn't, you have a long time to experiment. I think that Twitter already had Blue Sky in the works. There's a lot of kind of Web3 approaches to try to take down Twitter with a more decentralized approach to content moderation, to ownership, to governance, to all of those different things. Twitter is Twitter, though, and I think it's going to be really hard to get people to do something very similar to what they do on Twitter on something else. So I think if you're Elon, maybe you have the two core products kind of running in parallel. You have Twitter Blue, the regular one, and you have Twitter DAO or decentralized Twitter that you're experimenting with a la Blue Sky that they already had in the works. But I do think content moderation is one of these big, hairy problems that not a single person, including Elon Musk, wants to put on their own shoulders, and that nobody has solved perfectly yet. And so I do think it's an interesting approach to kind of put that back in the hands of the community. You'd obviously need to build a lot of processes and product around that. But I think it's inevitable at some point that the dialogue is kind of decentrally owned and moderated.
Yeah, so Packy, I mean, obviously you're a thought leader here in Web3, and there's a lot of notion that that is the future of these sorts of platforms going forward, that they will be decentralized. But how do you take a platform that's been around for almost 15 years, that has a couple 100 million users, it's not really growing here, and it's not really attracting, you know what I mean, the sort of, listen, if it's all about shared ownership in Web3 going forward, I don't know how you take something that's really concentrated and decentralized and break it down and make it something that they're going to have the incentives to kind of build the products that you want going forward. And I know that's kind of a bit of a mess here, but it just seems like he doesn't care about Web3, and it doesn't seem like that's a likely sort of thing.
He cares about the content moderation piece, though, and so maybe he puts that on his own shoulders. I haven't heard a better plan from him on the content moderation side. I think he's experimental. I think he's open to playing with it. He's talked about using Dogecoin on Mars, so it's not like he's completely opposed. And obviously, this is a plan that Jack had in the works. Do I think it happens in the next 2 years? Probably not. Does it need to be incredibly seamless and baked in? Absolutely. I mean, the other alternative here is that he opens it back up in a non-Web3 way, and people can build their own user interfaces on top of it, and Twitter kind of goes back to the old open API. I heard your concerns there, and I think that's valid. But when you have no kind of economic worries about what you want to do with this, but you care deeply about the future of humanity, and if you believe that the discourse that humans have with each other is an important piece of that, I think you can get pretty experimental if you're willing to throw $30 to $40 billion down the drain.
Yeah, you said that well, Packy. Good to see you as always, Packy McCormick. Guy, what's your? I mean, it's true. If it's private, any private company has a little bit more of a leash to try things out, particularly when you don't care if it turns a profit.
Agreed. But if the future of humanity rests on the shoulders of the viability of Twitter, I think we're all screwed. I mean, I'll just throw that out there. Number one. But, we're tasked with trying to figure out how to trade the stock. And, again, I think at these levels, there are more headlines to come. And I think the next headline will be more bullish than bearish. So I think you buy it here and sell it at 55. It's somewhat simplistic, but it's worked over the last couple of weeks.
It's a very pithy and amusing thing to say that if the future of humanity rests on Twitter's shoulders, we're all screwed. That's absolutely true. But I think the broader point here is that social media in general is a way of communicating and a way of disseminating information. That is going to be the way of the future. And so if we can't figure out how to make that an open discourse that we can trust, then we are screwed. And I think that is true. And so could this actually just be his playground? This is what he can buy. This is what was up for sale, potentially. Could this be his way of figuring that problem out? He likes to figure out big problems and find solutions, Tim.
Well, I'd look at it from the perspective of what's also not working out there. I mean, look at Facebook. Facebook is not working.
Right.
And this is, I think there's been an indictment out there for the companies, and 3.0 is very different from the world that Facebook lives in now. I'm sorry. They may talk about Meta. They may call themselves Meta. That's not the world they're in. So I do think that, first of all, you could have 2 or 3. You could have an ad plus. You could have a subscription model. You could have a decentralization, and you could try to do all the things. And we've seen how rabid there are parts of both the social media space, the meme world, and look, and Elon's following. And I do think that, back to Guy's point on the stock, which is that we touched lows on the stock really because I think there was no sense of what was going to drive it. The fact is there is something going on here. And a year ago, this was a $65 stock with Elon nowhere in sight and people believing that they were actually beginning to monetize. So to me, I think this is a stock that's in play.